I hope this model is of interest to fellow coaches. It pictorially describes a process I'm involved in quite often, and that is where to set the boundaries in a dynamic, ever changing situation around what to share, what not to share from coaching conversations. Now, it might seem on first acquaintance to say, well, nothing. Most of my coaching involves working within organization, where I'm working with currently up to 17 people over a long period across the world in different sites in one organization. And that's not uncommon for me. And I know a lot of coaches work in that context where, if you like, corporate, to give a label, issues come into play, where there's management stakeholders that have an interest in what's going on in those conversations. And it's quite right and proper to a degree to disclose that, not to keep the paying customer entirely in the dark. Now, the paying customer is the paying customer, but there's a point where, even though it might be a costly in financial terms decision, the decision needs to be taken ethically and properly by a coach. Sorry, that's out of bounds. There's things going on here that you will not be told about. So this model is my way of trying to best understand that with myself in mind, but also any other coaches it might help. So what have we got here? We've got three broad areas. Full disclosure, which is okay, there's nothing particularly contentious, there's nothing particularly sensitive. It's perfectly okay to say this is what's going on, this is what's happening, this is the nature of our discussions, the content, and the coaching client, if you like, as opposed to, for instance, the commissioning client or the stakeholder who might be that person's line manager. The coaching client's happy with that. It doesn't feel it compromises the confidentiality and the trust of that relationship. So full disclosure is fine. There's nothing really of any concern there. Decisions to be made is the tricky area, and I'll go into that a bit later. That's the area in which both the coach and the coaching client need to have a conversation, or sometimes the coach on their own, which might sound a little bit improper, and it can be. So this is all very nuanced and very contextual, where decisions are taken on, well, it's not cut and dried. It's a little bit this, it's a little bit that, and the decision made is to disclose or not. And the third area is absolutely not. We just keep this to ourselves. And ironically, of course, this is the area where other stakeholders are most interested in. They particularly want to get into those issues, which the coaching client might feel very concerned about and anxious about what might happen to the information once it's shared with others. So there's lots of dynamics here, and these issues don't always come into play all the time. So just a little bit more detail on the middle area, because that's the contentious one. That's the difficult one. That's the one that requires judgment by the coach. So I've split this into basically two. The decision to go into disclosure, and that would involve discussion most times with the coaching client. How do you feel about this? Do you think it's okay to tell this person about it? What would happen to this information? Are there any things that could be harmful to you if we share this information? How do you feel about passing on what is of interest to these stakeholders, what we might otherwise choose to keep to ourselves? And I would say we come down on the side of the coaching client. If we disclose in a way that the coaching client feels uncomfortable or that is improper, we lose the trust of that person. What's it all about? It's about helping people and creating an environment in which they feel helped, not in which they feel they cannot trust the person who's supposed to be the party that's helping them to learn and to grow. So the B2A box is okay. It's likely to involve disclosure, but is it? Because it's just as likely not, because if the coaching client says, no, I don't feel too happy about this, it's a discussion to have. It's not so cut and dried as to be directly in the A area. It's a difficult one sometimes, but not always. Then we come to the perhaps more difficult one between B and C, that a decision is taken, and the decision taken is not to disclose. And that could be something which annoys stakeholders, maybe the line manager of the coaching client. It could be something which harms the relationship between the commissioning organization and the coach. And I would say, ethically, so be it. Because if, in order to maintain a financial association with an organization, you're required as a coach to bend your ethic, to compromise your own values, and to harm the relationship, maybe irreparably, with the coaching client, then that's the natural consequence of choosing in the area of B2C to not disclose. So I like to think personally, I'm a coach that thinks about these things, that doesn't just say, yeah, what do you want to know? Here it is. That puts, frankly, the coaching client ahead of the commissioning client. Some other people might take a different view, and I'm not saying that my views are the right ones and they're right in every circumstance. I put this out there really as a discussion starter. What do you think about this? What are the issues that you've grappled with around this? What are the conclusions you come to? What are the things I'm missing here? Because I'm not suggesting this is a definitive model. I'm finding it quite helpful to graphically illustrate this, and I guess what it also brings out to me very strongly is the need to have this discussion in advance with both the learning coaching client and also other stakeholders to actually explicitly discuss these issues and at best to document them so there's actually a contractual agreement around where these boundaries lie, and they move around and we can't always anticipate what they might be. It's interesting, it's challenging, and I enjoy it because it brings home the need to develop judgment, competency in these areas. And I think that's a measure of a better coach than one that just says, yeah, anything you want to know, just tell me and I'll pass it on to you. So your views are welcome. I hope it's of value to people, fellow practitioners.